amazing displays of democracy in the British Parliament this week. There's Boris Johnson with the color coordinated Azov flag coordinated with his suit and hair, and members of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion in Congress. And we've been hearing so much about anti-Semitism, but I haven't seen any major pro-Israel or Jewish group condemn this display of reverence for Nazism, for a battalion that was founded by Andrei Beletsky, who declared that its mission was to lead the white world in a crusade against the Untermenschen. That's Andrei Beletsky, who was honored and with a Medal of Honor by Volodymyr Zelensky only a few months ago. What was Boris Johnson doing here, Aaron? I mean, what was the point of this?
Well, he's campaigning for increased military assistance to Ukraine, because now Ukraine's big thing is they want U.S. permission and U.S. help to strike targets across the border. And so Boris Johnson is welcoming the Azov battalion to, sing their praises and to endorse Zelensky's call. And Kit Clarenberg and Alex Rubinstein, who have a new YouTube channel called Active Measures, they just published video of Boris Johnson hosting Azov, and in that video, he sings their praises.
My message to you is very simple. Thank you to the heroes, the Azov Brigade, who warned us about their president tonight. Give the Ukrainians what they need. Give them the weapons. Give them the authorization to use those weapons outside their own borders if necessary. Now, absolutely ludicrous that Ukrainians should be forbidden from doing what Putin is doing himself and attacking Ukrainian forces. Why on earth shouldn't Ukrainians be able to attack Russian forces mustering on their borders? Give them those weapons, give them the attackers, give them the budget, give them the air defenses that they need. It's the single best investment that we can make in the defense of the whole Euro-Atlantic area, is supporting Ukrainian heroes. We rely wholly on heroes such as the people who are here tonight with us from the Azov Brigade.
I mean, recall that the U.S. Congress banned assistance to the Azov battalion because they are neo-Nazi. This was a law passed after many attempts by Congressmember John Conyers, late John Conyers. It finally passed a few years ago. It still, I believe, is on the books. I don't think it's been rescinded, but everyone just ignores it, and everyone just ignores that we used to openly call them what they are, which is neo-Nazi. And now that's all forgotten, and Boris Johnson can go and call them heroes and lobby for them to receive direct U.S. assistance to strike across the border into Russia. And to answer his question, why shouldn't Ukraine be given our help to strike across the border into Russia? Well, first of all, I mean, why should we be belligerents in a war against a nuclear armed power? How is that in the interest of anyone's security? And for Ukraine, putting aside the fact that, all the background of the coup in 2014 and the undermining of the Minsk peace process, all that stuff, just practically for Ukraine, how does this help Ukraine to escalate with an adversary that at every stage, whenever Ukraine escalates, Russia retaliates far more ferociously because it has far more power? That's just the reality of this war, which was recognized once by Barack Obama and Antony Blinken. Back when Obama was the president, Blinken said that if you're trying to engage militarily with Russia, you're playing to Russia's strength. So put aside the morality and all the facts, like the political context, all this, just tangibly, militarily, you're only encouraging the decimation of Ukraine. We've seen that at every single turn. After Ukraine hit the Kerch Bridge in the fall of 2022, Russian attacks massively escalated for the first time, going after infrastructure that they hadn't hit before. So what you're doing, if you're Boris Johnson, is you're basically asking for Ukraine to face further destruction. On top of the fact that you're ignoring all the multiple opportunities to, rather than engaging in further wars, to actually negotiate, which Boris Johnson has sabotaged in the past. And that's an alternative to all this escalation, is actually attempting diplomacy, which Boris Johnson has opposed and undermined at every turn.
Yeah. And there were denials that Boris Johnson flew to Ukraine to push them in April 2022 to not negotiate with Russia. Tens and tens of thousands of deaths ago. And now we've seen Ukrainian negotiators come out and admit that that's precisely what took place. We've seen the Journal of the Council on Foreign Relations, Foreign Affairs confirm that that took place. Everybody knows that Boris Johnson was the guy who went in to promise Zelensky not only fame and to stroke his vanity, but to promise massive amounts of weapons, armaments, and Western support and victory. A victory that's been obviously elusive, as we clearly predicted. Now, Boris Johnson, let's just approach it from a different point of view. Let's approach it from a sort of America first point of view. Sure, okay, Ukraine, you can go strike Russia as far as you want, but not with our help. Why should we, Americans or British people, have to support Ukraine waging war against a nuclear power? Why? How does that protect security throughout Western Europe, as he claimed? It doesn't. It's also clearly deeply damaged the British economy. There was an interview by one of Boris Johnson's closest aides, his basically outsourced political brain, Dominic Cummings, that appeared 2 weeks ago. I could pull it up in a second. And basically what Cummings said is that these sanctions that we enacted, along with the Americans on Russia, have boomeranged on us, screwed us, and we're supporting a corrupt mafia state, in his words, in Ukraine, and we don't know where any of the money is going. So I think Johnson might have been responding to that interview by Cummings, which hasn't really been reported in any Western media, although it seems kind of like these were bombshell comments by someone who's still very active in British politics. And then there's the fact that that footage, which we saw the full footage thanks to active measures, Alex Rubinstein and Kit Klarenberg, Ukrainian state media had disseminated some of the footage before, but they left out the part at the end where Boris Johnson called the Azov battalion heroes.
Really?
For obvious reasons. Yeah.
That's so funny. On your point about how is this in the interest of anyone's security? I mean, look at what is being hit right now by Ukraine inside of Russia. One of the sites that just got hit was a early warning radar, which detects incoming attacks, including nuclear strikes. So this is basically an attack on infrastructure that helps protect the world from World War III, from nuclear war. And this is the kind of stuff that can happen when you're fueling a conflict against the world's other top nuclear armed power. I mean, do we really want to be providing weaponry and intelligence and assistance for attacking radar sites that detect incoming attacks and that can help Russia figure out whether or not it's being hit with nuclear weapons? And we know from the past there have been many, many close calls where, because Soviet forces misinterpreted a U.S. operation or a U.S. a ship movement, they thought for a second that they were being attacked with nuclear weapons, and luckily somebody intervened to prevent that. But this is the infrastructure we need to keep the peace, and it's being decimated or undermined because of this proxy war.
Yeah, and I see a few people in the chat weren't aware of the Dominic Cummings comments and didn't believe me. Here they are. This whole Ukrainian corrupt mafia state has basically conned us all, and we're all going to get effed as a consequence. We should have never gotten into the whole stupid situation, Cummings said. This is not a replay of 1940 with Potemkin Zelensky as the Churchillian underdog. Cost of living has been a massive shock. The sanctions regime has been much more of a disaster for European politics than it has been for Russian politics. They, the advocates of backing Ukraine, said, oh, China will support us. I said then, no, China will not. China is going to make loads of money by supplying Russia. The results have been getting into a war of attrition with Russia, who we pushed into an alliance with the world's biggest manufacturing power. And yeah, Russia is supplying their own weaponry. They have their own domestic military production. that is outpacing the US and Western Europe in supplying Ukraine. And it's their war. If it's Ukraine's war, why do we have to support them? And what are we supporting anyway? We're not supporting Ukraine. We're supporting a tiny fraction or maybe a plurality of the Ukrainian population and the Ukrainian electorate that has nationalist, Galician-oriented views that are hostile to the entire eastern population of their country, or what was their country. So we're not supporting Ukraine. We're supporting a nationalist movement within Ukraine that has malign intentions.
Yeah, a big reason why we have this war is because that tendency, the ultranationalist tendency inside Ukraine you're talking about, didn't want to implement a peace deal, the Minsk peace deal, which would have reincorporated the parts of eastern Ukraine that rebelled against the coup government, because they didn't want to grant them equal rights. They did not see them as equal Ukrainians. And so therefore, because they refused to implement the Minsk Accords, that's a major reason why we have this whole thing to begin with. So we're fighting this insane and dangerous proxy war on behalf of fascists, basically. That's what it comes down to.